Welcome to Fantastic Females, our adventure to finding the mythical island of freedom together. I'm Kalyani.
And I'm Rupali. We are your next door finance experts sharing our experiences in the world of money and energetics.
Hello, today we are excited to bring a new conversation to our podcast, something new that we haven't done before. And it is to talk about any business that's had an impact on us recently. Some of you might know that I was at Disney for the last 2 weeks, Disney World in Orlando, and it's had a massive impact on me. I didn't go into the holiday expecting much, but I've come back completely gobsmacked, and I would like to share some of the business and investment aspects of it. Welcome to the episode.
How exciting. I've never been to Disney, so I'm super keen to hear about what you've got to say.
Yeah, so I have family who go every year, multiple times a year as well. And to be very honest, I thought that they were being excessively obsessed about it. And how special could it be? In the end, it's all about Mickey Minnie, cartoons. It's for kids, and I don't want to do that anymore. There's a world outside of Disney, but it was anything but. Um, I would like to start with some kind of foundations and facts that you might find interesting as well, Rupali.
Perfect.
The first one is that Disney owns a lot of different companies that we may not realize, like National Geographic, ABC
Oh, wow.
Entertainment, yeah, Pixar, of course, and a lot of like different Hollywood studios, etc. And amongst all their businesses, their theme park business gets them the most amount of revenue, which I found really interesting as well. And then I started doing some research. And in Orlando, they have two parks in the US, just also to go into a little more detail. One is on the West Coast in LA, which was Disneyland. This was the first park that they opened, and it's a direct kind of reflection of Walt Disney's own vision. And he walked this park and he kind of lived through this park, and he saw about the first 10 years of this park before he passed away. And after he passed away, there was kind of like a lot of changes in the company, etc., but the company still continued to grow. And then they opened a second park, which was his vision and dream, and his brother executed his vision and dream on the East Coast, where they bought a lot of land, which they didn't have the luxury of on the West Coast in LA. So on the East Coast, they chose an area which had which had land aplenty, and so the size of this park in Orlando, the collection of parks is the same size of the city of San Francisco. That's how big it is. And none of
Wow.
this made sense to me until I visited. So I am going to talk a bit like a fangirl this episode. But that's the beauty of it. I'm here to share my feelings. So please bear with me.
Go.
So, Walt Disney World in Orlando is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary currently, and you can see that the business is so mature. And I mean, I loved kind of seeing the business aspect of it while also seeing the emotional impact that it's had on people. So, the theme parks, like I was saying, is the largest source of revenue for Disney, which I found quite interesting to note. Apart from all their digital business, all their movie business, all their production businesses, etc. And then I started doing some research about just the Orlando parks. So in Orlando, Walt Disney World has four major parks. The first one, the oldest one, is Magic Kingdom, which is celebrating 50 years. The second one is Epcot, which is celebrating 40 years as well this year. And then the other two are Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. So four parks, four major parks, and then it also has a lot of like smaller auxiliary kind of things to do. And apart from the parks, there are about 25 to 30 hotels that supplement this park ecosystem. And then there's also a shopping area which is called Disney Springs. And This was the vision that Walt Disney started with in terms of Orlando. He was part of the initial planning, etc., and then the execution was left to his brother upon his death. So his idea was to build a place that is totally kind of ruled by fun, and it leads people to feeling happy. It's a magical happy place, and that's what he wanted people to retain. And this whole ecosystem of parks and hotels outside and a shopping area was thought of and created, envisioned to keep in mind adults and kids who can enjoy together as a family. A lot of times you see that kids have very different things to do, and it's hard for adults. As a parent myself, I don't find myself engaged in a lot of activities that my son would want to do, for example. And his idea was to create something.
So that's what I
Um,
actually wanted to ask you about. Sorry. So you're saying it's for adults and kids. I mean, I suppose I get the idea of kind of, an adult going back into their childhood and enjoying it. But in terms of the experience, like, how did you find it?
That's exactly it. I suppose I should stop a little and let you air your
No, that's
opinions and
fine.
ask questions. I'm just going on in my excitement. So that's exactly what his idea was. The idea was born from watching his two daughters play in the park one Saturday or Sunday. And he just thought that what if there was a place where adults and kids could enjoy together? And from that dream, he brought it to life, obviously with a lot of hard work and money considerations as well. I'll touch upon that in a second. But I'll go back into talking about the Orlando parks. So it's this large ecosystem which was born out of this vision that we just spoke about. And when I started doing some research, each of these parks has a capacity of being able to handle 130,000 to 140,000 visitors a day. Even if we consider
Wow.
100,000 visitors a day, exactly, it's mind boggling, right? Their total revenue daily turnover is $19.6 million daily. So it's really mind boggling. I mean, beyond the
We need
point, the
to create
zeros.
our own park, Kalyani.
I did start thinking about that, but actually, I could also see that the costs would be proportionately as high. From what I experienced, the whole ethos of the company is based on seeing people happy, and that simple emotional motto has led them through all decisions. Whether you think about their digital assets or their kind of movie production assets, or recently I've had this experience in the theme park. We stayed in a theme park resort as well. We stayed in a Disney resort, and from the customer service to the customer service is so extra, and that could be like a whole different section that I could talk about later. But all the members of their team are called cast members, and there are so many like touch points where we were just taken aback, and the whole ethos is to make the experience happy and for us to have that feeling of feeling really satisfied and looked after. And in the park as well, there was a section on India, Nepal, there was a section on Africa, and they're so authentic. I mean, I honestly forgot for a second that I was in America, like in the heartland of America. In the Indian
Wow.
section, yeah, for example, they had open wires, they had an unfinished temple, they had really beautiful carvings. So
Very
it
cool.
wa it was so interesting to see. I happened to spend Diwali day in that section just by chance as well, so it was quite nice. It was my first time not spending Diwali at home. So the attention to detail requires budgets, high budgets.
I looked it up in terms of the cost of building Disney World, and it was $400 million at the time. So obviously today it would be that much more. And the project employed over 9,000 construction workers.
Yes, thank you for that. And also, the more I've researched into it, the more you kind of realize as a business owner, there's never anything that's been done like this before. So imagine the kind of conversations Walt Disney or management later would have had to have with money lenders, banks, etc., in trying to convince them to believe in this project. And the project has done so well. I've learned more about the business of Disney from a series on Disney Plus called The Imagineering Story, and it kind of goes through a lot of details of opening the parks, behind the scenes kind of details about making it sustainable, etc. And Disney mentioned that the biggest challenge of his life was money, which is so ironical because I'm sure today the corporation is loaded with money, and unfortunately, that was his biggest challenge at the time. So attention to detail really comes to mind. You mentioned the cost as well. So high revenue obviously leads. It comes from a high investment, and you could really see that attention to detail and that willingness to accept that investment in what I saw at Disney.
I think let me just link back to, it's amazing how Disney has gotten the whole emotional side of it like on point from what you're saying and from what I've heard in the past. And something I was listening to just earlier today actually is how financial markets, I mean, it's also linked to what we mentioned previously, that financial markets are all about the story, right? So what I was listening to is in terms of financial markets, how the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis in 2008, 2009, it was driven purely by the fact that in 2007, investors told themselves a story about stability of home prices, about the ability of markets to price things in, about prudence of bankers. And whereas if someone was just looking at the world, it would appear as though the world is the same, there's nothing changed. In fact, there was even progress because there were smartphones, there was new traction in all different fields. So concretely, actually, we were better off. But because people, investors, stopped believing the story that they told themselves just 2 years ago, in 2009, it was a very, very different picture. So it's this story and the whole emotional side of it that drives a lot, right? So if he got that on point, I mean, that's where the money just followed.
That's exactly what I saw. And there's nowhere else that I've left with such a profound sense of positivity than I did after leaving Walt Disney World. I feel like, so he had a tough time in terms of raising the funds, raising the capital, making sure obviously his budgets are in control, workers strikes, etc., etc. The scale of things is obviously huge if you think about a 400 million investment in those times. So it was a tough ride for him. It wasn't as easy as like money following his vision. But he made it happen, like he had that conviction and he stuck with the conviction. A lot of times I find if we have a failure, we kind of end up very easily fixing on that. And there might be people listening to us right now who are a certain age and they might be thinking, oh, it's too late for me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have the kind of investments I would like to have by this age, etc., etc. And then that's the story you tell yourself, exactly like you were just mentioning about the power of a story. And storytelling is such a big like pillar of the business model at Disney as well. And Walt Disney himself must have told himself a story that's made this a reality today for so many of us, right? For so many people to experience it physically. And it really kind of lies in that it's such a small but big thing, the feeling that you have, the conviction that you have in your vision, in the emotional impact you want to cause.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually, in terms of impact, it's going to be it's going to be an obvious question now that we're discussing Disney. But guess who's the biggest single site employer in the world? Disney, with 75,000 employees as of 2021. So that is also an impact. I mean, he's created this massive park, or the resort as they call it, and to have that many people working, 75,000 like families. It's amazing. I think
Absolutely.
that's really inspiring, and I think everyone out there. I think there should be a cue to everyone out there that, anything's possible. We just need to stick to it, and I'm telling this to myself as I am telling it to you. So I think it's the passion, isn't it? The passion for trying to really get to that feeling that he was aspiring to get at. And like you said, if it was a numbers driven business, it may not have even lasted because it would have been run a very, very different way.
Yes, which brings me to another point that I really wanted to share with all of you, which is not everything. I mean, it's taken them years to come to a point where we are seeing them as a company that they are now, and a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, tears, all of that, right? But I wanted to mention that A, like I said, they didn't let failures get to them. There were some rides that didn't do very well. Disneyland Paris had a rocky start as well. The French didn't like Mickey Mouse coming into their culture that they guard quite fiercely. It wasn't all hunky dory, but they didn't let that stop. While that was happening in Paris, the management, the leadership was still able to be excited and bring new attractions in America where they knew that they could take a chance, but they didn't feel scared of taking that chance, like they didn't let failure scare them into non-activity. A lot of times in the fear of failure, we'd rather just not take action. And that's definitely something that I've learned in terms of just keeping at it and seeing it grow. I mean, points for consistency, right? Points for being brave and showing up.
Exactly. Exactly. Like we are today.
Yes, like we do every week, actually. And
Yes.
I would like to maybe end this discussion with one very interesting observation, which was they've recently acquired the whole Star Wars franchise. So when I think of Disney, I end up thinking of Mickey Mouse and cartoons. And to this, I would actually like to add a disclaimer. In all the four parks, there was one ride based on Mickey and Minnie, which is
Oh,
also
wow.
very recent. Yeah. It used to be a world movies or something ride until recently. And now it's a Mickey and Minnie runaway railway. So that was definitely a misconception. But coming back to the point, that's what I think about when I think about Disney. Star Wars is not something that I put together with Disney. I don't know. Did you ever watch Star Wars, Rupali?
No, I haven't. I know the gist of it, but no, I wouldn't have ever thought of it being, yeah.
Yeah, same here. I haven't seen it and I never thought I'd be interested. But in what I saw, they've created a whole parallel universe. They acquired the rights, and that I'm sure must have been quite controversial because they could have alienated some existing Disney fans and related to them anymore, not connected with them anymore. But the way they did it, and once again, they didn't put any stops and they went so deep into it in creating that universe in physical reality in the park. This is at Hollywood Studios, that they've actually ended up converting a lot of Disney fans into Star Wars fans. These are people who
Oh,
would have
wow.
not touched Star Wars. Yeah. People like my 16-year-old niece, I mean, I just don't see her ever wanting to get into this franchise, but she's heavily into it because it's at Disney and she's a regular at Disney. So it's
That's
such
the
an
power of brand, isn't it? And how that kind of that emotion that he's created within all of us, and how you kind of change your tastes and preferences due to that emotion about all sorts of other stuff.
exactly. And also about building conviction once again in risky decisions, and when it's done well, being confident about that bringing up good results. And that's something that I really took away from my visit. I said I would end with the last point, but how can I end without talking about stocks and what's happened
Yes.
with Disney stocks, at least recently? So, Disney is a business that has always been super lucrative. I've owned some Disney stocks since 2020, I would want to say. At the time, it was looking like it was really kind of booming. A lot of things were booming at the time. But Disney, especially, was expected to bring up Disney Plus as a competitor to Netflix at the time. It totally makes sense in terms of how much content they have, and they've done really well since. But they've also seen a change in leadership, and this also leads into our, the whole message about sentiments and how important they are. So after the passing away of Walt Disney and then his brother as well, what Disney did really well was to cultivate good creative leadership. A lot of management, typical management, may not understand how to run a creative company in terms of really nurturing these teams that may not need as much corporate structure as other companies might need. Their leadership did really well until recently when the CEO has changed in 2021. He's brought up a lot of changes in the experiences, especially around the theme park ecosystem, that really impact a customer's experience quite negatively, I would have to say, in terms of, you can't book some things in advance. You have to keep checking every few hours. You can only book the fast lanes on the day. Previously, you didn't have to pay for fast passes. Now you have to pay. You have to pay on top of that for certain rides in the park. So it's become pretty messy, pretty complicated. And apart from that, there are some other changes as well. I'm sure he has a mandate of making the bottom line or the profits look better, especially after a quiet period during COVID for a theme park. But it is going through a period of change, and you can see that the stock has been declining pretty steadily, which is also reflecting the market. But Disney as a business is probably undervalued on the stock market. This is not something we've spoken about before, Rupali.
Yeah, exactly. We can I think go into it in a future episode because that way we'll be able to do it justice. I just wanted to add to what you're saying around management and why that kind of thing can be taken negatively. It's not so much because one Kalyani felt like she didn't have a really good experience and she wouldn't go back, but it's more about 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, how does that impact the business and how does that impact the profitability? Because when you're investing, or when, depending on what type of investor you are, but if you're a mid to long term investor, then you do care about how the company performs over time, what the prospects are. And so for this reason, this would have been read as a negative thing for Disney's growth prospects. And that's probably why it also sold off.
The sentiment around this CEO is quite negative, and as soon as he was appointed, there was a big decline in the stock price, and there is a lot of dissent around his decisions currently as well on the internet. But once again, this is a period of change, and we know that there have been periods of change. Like, I'm sure if a comparative study was done from when Walt Disney passed away and there was no clear vision and leadership hemming the company, they must have gone through something similar then as well. We don't know what the real financials were that are behind making these changes. But once again, none of that matters as long as the sentiment is negative. So it's really important for all of us to bear this in mind, and also have confidence that if the company that we're investing in is providing value, is having that impact, then in the long run, it will be a good investment.
Yes, exactly. And each company has its own specific kind of exposures and risks, which we've touched on upon previously, and we will do so in the future too. I think just to end this chat on a fun note, I've got a couple of trivia-like questions for you, Kalyani. Now that you've just come back from Disney, so let me ask
This is,
away.
this is totally unrehearsed, so I don't know what Rupali is going to ask me. Let's do this.
Right. Firstly, let's start with Mickey because when you look at Disney, that's the first thing you think of, right? So, Mickey Mouse, what's his age?
Ooh. I would say around 70.
94.
Okay.
It was created in 1928. So, yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't remember that. I'm sure I heard it somewhere there.
Yeah. I also found it quite interesting because we grew up with Mickey as if he was our age. And then another one is, how many characters does Disney have?
I don't know, somewhere in the thousands. I would say 3,000, around that mark.
2000. Yeah.
2000.
From what I've read, I've not done extensive research. This is something I came across, so I thought I'd mention it.
Ah, that's really interesting. Thanks for giving me more more facts about Disney, and hopefully all of you enjoyed this different style of having a conversation about businesses that we love. Next week we'll be back with something that Rupali will be talking about, taking a lead in talking about, and we can all learn from what she has to tell us.
Looking forward to that.
Us too.
None of the information provided is financial advice, and Fantastic Females is not a financial advisor.
The information provided is educational only. It is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances.
Please use your own due diligence before making any financial or investment decisions.
So please share this podcast, leave your reviews, your comments to support us on our journey. We are so passionate about making your lives more abundant with this information.
So with that, we bring this episode of our financial adventure to an end. Please follow us on all social media platforms at Fantastic Females.